hey, there's something wrong. And because she didn't have a PhD and she was a woman, they just blew her off.
And you talk about some of the cities in Alabama where they would dump all these chemicals and it would cause birth defects.
They went to the farthest place they could possibly go just to see the reach of DDT. And they come to a lake and thinking that there's going to be nothing in it. And guess what?
Basically, a shitload of people ended up dying. And after the lawsuit, everyone ended up being awarded, I think, like $560. But this happened like 25 years ago, right? And hey everyone, you're here with Mark Boutwell on Perfect Artist TV. So today I invited one of my VIP guests, Sean Tidwell, to the channel. And just got to give you a backstory of what we'll be covering. We're not going to really be talking so much about growing plants on this channel. I mean, we have about 500 videos on the channel already talking about this. And Sean came to me. His plants were actually already beautiful. He had multiple tent setups and all of the plants within the tents look absolutely gorgeous. And after a few months, I was like, hey, you know, you really do have the hang of this. Are you sure you want to keep going with this VIP membership? And he was like, well, I'd like to switch it up. I'd like to do a little bit more mentoring around the belief structure around farming and growing and the practices. And I was like, all right, okay. We decided to start getting into various books that I've covered and that over time we've covered that we thought were interesting and create a belief structure around why we do what we do. Like at some point after you learn how to grow this plant, initially it might just be that's the why, right? I just want to learn to grow my own medicine. But then after you get the hang of that, you begin to think about your thought process of why do you use the fertilizer you're using? Why do you use the pesticide you're using? Why do you trim the way you trim? Why do you cure the way you cure? Why do you sell your product to the people you sell it to, right? And then before you know it, all those whys start to create a culture or a belief structure around your growing techniques. And that's what Sean and I are going to do today. And hopefully as we create this series of videos, we'll be talking about various books that I think if we as a team and as a channel collectively read these books that have been around for 50 years, it's just they've fallen to the wayside. If we take the time to read some of these books, just as what we're doing together, I think us as a channel, we're going to collectively have a stronger conviction for our belief structure and how we grow these plants. So let me go ahead and introduce you to Sean. He's one of my VIP growers, and please introduce yourself and tell us about what book we're covering today.
All right, what's up, everybody? My name is Sean Tidwell, like Mark said, and we're covering Rachel, to make sure I get her name right, Rachel Carson. This is a very, very interesting book, and when Mark suggested it to me, I figured it was going to be easygoing book, very light, and I sent him a message and I says, what the hell did you send me? Because the book ended up being, it was the audio book. The audio book ended up being like a Mad Max. And what's the name of the movie? Mad Max for the Territory? But more so for growers and farmers. And it was a very frightening book. I felt that once I started reading it and it opened up my eyes, I was, holy smoke, like is this really what's going on? And just from there, I just kept digging and we just kept going back and forth. And it's a beautiful book. Now, how far do you want me to go? Like, what do you want to talk about?
So today with this channel, we're going to do small videos, a bite size of the books. Hopefully we recommend that you pick up the book, get on audible.com. The Silent Spring is the specific book, and go along. What we're going to do is we're just going to do pull a couple of chapters out, one video at a time. Today, we're just going to cover the intro, and we're just going to kind of talk about some of the significance around it, some of the aha moments. For me, my father recommended this book to me, and yeah, so today we're just going to cover the intro, and then over time, hopefully we just pull chapter by chapter out and talk about some of the significance of that book and some of the highlights, and motivate some of you guys to fall back around, kind of like a book club, right? We're just a bunch of old men reading books together.
All right. I have an aha moment for you.
No, please tell me. Yeah, I'd love to get into it.
All right. What was crazy when I was listening to the opening credits, which really gives a lot of her background and what she had to deal with in the industry that she was in. And just imagine, we know that women went into corporate America around late 60s, in early 70s, that's when women made the push into corporate America. And even then, they had to deal with so much BS, right? Now we have Rachel way before then saying, hey, there's something wrong. And because she didn't have a PhD and she was a woman, they just blew her off. They said, you're not qualified to talk about anything. And at that point, with the pesticides and just what she called herbicides, the money train was already moving, and they weren't planning on stopping that thing anytime soon. And I was kind of looking at it like, imagine, Mark, imagine a car burning, and you're trapped in a car, and somebody runs up to the car and tries to pull you out, and you go, whoa, wait a minute, you're not qualified to save me. Go out and bring some real men to pull me out of this car. And this was what it was actually about. Like, she was saying, listen, there's something wrong. There's something not right. Like, animals are dying, insects are dying. And that was the aha moment for me. And it was like how hard it must have been for her to bring awareness to this issue.
Yeah. As you were talking right there, just stemming off of that aha moment you had, it was right where what we're talking about a little further too, what pops into my mind is the design of the feminine energy and the design of the male energy, right? Like, you have a male-dominated environment where the bottom line in making profits and coming up with a new idea and wanting to implement it as fast as possible and bypass all problems is kind of like what the guy does, right? Fight or flight. That's why we go to war, right? We need to get the problem done, put the fire out. There's an emergency, run toward it, stop it, calm it down. But then is how we approach that problem the most efficient way to approach it. And then you have this feminine energy that kind of is a little more patient. I don't even want to say is patient. I don't want to say she was patient. She was very aggressive to realizing when there was a problem. But I would say that there was like another level of awareness to the impact of our decisions, right? I think because she didn't have her degree, she had to influence the hearts and minds with her thoughts and her imagination. And what was really funny also in the opening credits, she talks about a story of a city, right? And then as your heart starts to like weep, she then gets to the end of it and she says, that was just a story, but it could happen. Then if you actually Google it, because this book was written in the 60s, if you Google it, you talk about Monsanto's, right? And you talk about some of the cities in Alabama where they would dump all these chemicals and it would cause birth defects. And we know of it. I can't remember the specific names of the specific chemicals, but when she initially created the book with this credit, it was creating in her mind the worst case scenario in her mind, but it ended up coming true.
Yeah, definitely. I think that what was really sad was she had to go in through the back door, and she was gifted at writing. I think, wasn't she doing writing for music and stuff like that, as far as with nature and stuff? I'm not really sure. Yeah, but she had to go to the back door.
Exactly. She got hired she didn't have a degree, and she got hired to write articles, right? But then people started to fall in love with the articles. Like, no one gives a crap about the medical name, but everyone can get caught up in the story, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what she started writing stories. And from there, when you get through the books, her being around all these people and seeing it firsthand, she started to realize, like, hey, I can write a story about this and make it an impactful story. And that's kind of like you said, she went around, instead of having a degree and doing all these things, she ended up going to the highest level. I think it was Kennedy, right? I think it was Kennedy, the video you sent us, where her words were reverberated by the president of the United States. She didn't have a degree. She was just a storyteller.
I think Kennedy even helped create the EPA after she brought awareness to that. I could be wrong, but that's the information that I got. But the other thing is, when you repeatedly hit a wall over and over and over again, obviously it's painful. But she has such passion and conviction, and like I said, patience. She said, you know what, I'm going to go another route. I'm just going to go another route, and let's see what happens. And I think that was great. The sad thing is, while she was working on this book, she had a battle with cancer. And I don't know if she knew it or not, but I think it was really sad. She never really got to bear the fruits of her labor, in a sense, while she was still alive.
That was also something that kind of also hit me too, was she was on this earth. She was aware of this problem. She put in a set of words something so powerful that even after her death, people are still fighting fighting for swamplands. They're still fighting for less buildings to be built. They're more thoughtful. Like when you think about what's the origin story of why, like we're talking about the culture, right? What's the origin story of why we try to be a little bit more eco-friendly to our thought process on building or farming or whatever we do? This woman probably has influenced hundreds of millions of people without them even realizing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I'm going to just jump a little bit, and I got to touch on this, and it's later on in the chapters, but I'm just going to talk about it. They went to the farthest place they could possibly go just to see the reach of DDT, just to see how far it could go, away from farms, away from people. They just says, we're just going to go. And they come to a lake and thinking that there's going to be nothing in it. And guess what? DDT was in it. And that's, to me, is very scary. And I think that nobody really knew at that point that it couldn't be getting rid of, right? Once it's here permanently. And that was the scary part for me. And I just wanted to touch on that because it was just, that's what really stuck out in my mind, where I was like, holy shit.
You're right. I mean, this is why in the channel, I harp on law minimum, law of tolerance, right? And just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. We don't think about how when we throw something down the sink or we throw something away in the trash can, where does it go?
Yeah, right.
It's going to be someone else's problem, right? We're just getting rid of our problem. And again, these videos that as we create them, we talk about various books. Hopefully it ends up developing into more and more books that we want to bring to the surface. But this book, guys, just the introduction will make you cry. Okay, it will make you cry. Is there anything else you want to talk about around the intro?
Yeah, just something that stuck out. Let me look at my notes because I definitely wanted to...
We want to motivate people. We want motivated people. Read this.
Listen. So I was like, I wonder if they're still using it because I know we're not using it. And then I said, okay, let me, Google is your friend. So let's go on Google. So I went on Google, and South America, Asia, and Africa, they're still using DDT. So just because we're not using it, we're still affected by it. So it's almost like we treat that, or we treat pollution or stuff like that almost as if it's a fart. I hate to be nasty, but a fart. It's nasty. Nobody wants to smell it, but it'll go away. Then we forget about it, right? But it's not like that. It stays. And it doesn't matter if it's done down the street. It's being evaporated. It's going up into the air. It's going into the clouds, and it's raining down on us from somewhere else. So that's the scary part right there. It's like we can't get away from it at this point. Like we have to stop using DDT. Not only that, all the stuff that can harm us, and I think that we need to be more responsible. And I know we are responsible because we're talking about this, but we need to have more awareness, I should say.
Yeah,
Pretty much it.
No, that's another great point. These are the things we want to bring up. When we read these books, we want to bring up these aha moments because if they were impactful for us, this is why we want to highlight them and say, guys, just like you said, right? We made something illegal to be used here in the United States.
Yeah. We
got Mexico, we got Canada, we got South America. We got a lot of people that don't know about these things. This book has been around for 50 years. And when Sean asked me to go down this direction, this was the first book I recommended because I was like, well, I mean, Sean, you got to make a decision what direction you want to go in life. Here's the first book. This is going to make it very clear for you. There's so many people I know, once they're aware of something, they either do two things. They either say, wow, that was mind-blowing, I'm going to do something different, or they just say, oh, okay, interesting. They just keep doing it. Like, it doesn't fucking matter, and those people I try to push out of my life, right? I try to push out of my life. I don't want to be around those types of people. But then when Sean gets back to me and it's like, wow, that book was mind-blowing, then I'm like, okay, let's build upon this enthusiasm we have to make a better world right now, right? Let's make a video. Let's share it with other people. Let's encourage other people to read a book that is now 60 years old. Sean, when you were listening to the book, I mean, how many things in this book were a new awareness or you learned something new?
A lot. A lot. Like the DDT, different versions of that. the way it works, the way we use and it's really like the information was basic in a lot of ways, like a lot of information I didn't know, but I understood it once it was explained. But then it got to the point where I was like, wow, like this is still affecting us. This isn't going anywhere.
Yep.
So that's what it gave me new information to research. So the book itself was a teacher in a sense. And I also wanted to say, I don't know if you saw that video where they were spraying. Oh my God, they were spraying the kids down in the class, like spraying them down, and they're all laughing. Yeah, like they're all laughing like it's snowing, and I'm like, you just killed these kids. And the other question I have is, what happened to the people when of course they died, but did their families get compensated or anything like that? Or these corporations just basically got away with murder? Like they basically said, oops. Like, what happened?
Well, I mean, just right now, and I'm going to pull it up on right? Google's our friend. So I'm going to pull it up real fast. I believe it was over in India. Basically, God, I wish I could. I got to get better at pulling these things up and get better at sharing these types of things. But I don't know if it was Monsanto's or another large corporation along those lines. Basically, a shitload of people ended up dying. And after the lawsuit, everyone ended up being awarded, I think, like $560. But this happened like 25 years ago, right? And all their families, everyone, just to get the $25, they're all put on gag orders as well. So it's not like you get to talk to all the witnesses of these types of situations. They're to get any type of medical taken care of, all these stuff. It's a horrible, vicious, disgusting game that really stems into the 13th and 14th Amendment actually in the United States, because as a side note, that's when we dissolved when there was no longer a separation between a church and state. And why was that significant? Was because corporations were designed to avoid people from liability, and laws were established to avoid people from taxation so that we can have our freedom or our sovereignty. I don't like to use the word freedom, sovereignty. And so when the 13th and 14th Amendment were created, it gave a corporation the ability to be looked at as an individual, a person. So as people, right, you're free from taxation. And then as a corporation, you're also free from liability, right? So that's why corporations became a very vicious world, because now they can accumulate enormous amounts of wealth, not be taxed, and also not be liable for the decisions.
That's similar to the pharmaceutical industry. When they had to make a payout, and the payout that they made, I forgot how much it was, but over a certain period of time, like they're only paying out what they pretty much made their first week. Right? So it was like not even a slap on the wrist. It was more like a mosquito bite, so these are the consequences. Well, if this is the consequence, I'll do it again. I just do it in a different way.
A lot of people don't know that vaccines they're free from liability for vaccines as well. We don't want to get too much into these things, but a book like this, just one book that was written 60 years ago that I shared with a VIP member friend of mine, and that one book, it encouraged him which he's already a self-motivated person to learn, right? We're always gathering information, but one book encouraged him, it stimulated him to want to learn more about the problem. Does it still exist? Is it around us? How do we solve the problem? Yada, yada, yada. And this is why also I always push the minerals, the drops of balance, because drops of balance actually neutralizes the chemicals like DDT, right? It neutralizes it, makes it inert, turns it back into a sulfate of minerals so it doesn't affect our soil biology and doesn't affect us later down the road. Guys, this is basically, just know the problem still exists. I highly recommend to pick up this book. It's on Audible. It could cost $8, whatever it is. But a book like this, if you care, it's going to alter your decision making, and it's going to help you become more strict around your value system. Sean, do we want to say anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I'm pretty much. I think we're done. I just can't wait till we get to the next chapter and really digging into this.
Guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Sean, thank you so much for coming on the channel and talking a little bit about this book.